at the end of the millennium. With great force and anger, he threw it at Indra, roaring and exclaiming loudly, "O sinful one, thus shall I kill you." Text 3. Flying in the sky, Vitrasura's trident resembled a brilliant meteor. Although the blazing weapon was difficult to look upon, King Indra, unafraid, cut it to pieces with his thunderbolt. Simultaneously, he cut off one of Vitrasura's arms, which was as thick as the body of Vasuki, the king of the serpents. Text 4. Although one of his arms was severed from his body, Vitrasura angrily approached King Indra and struck him on the jaw with an iron mace. He also struck the elephant that carried Indra. Thus, Indra dropped the thunderbolt from his hand. Text 5. The denizens of various planets, like the demigods, demons, charanas, and siddhas, praised Vitrasura's deed. But when they observed that Indra was in great danger, they lamented, "Alas, alas." Text 6. Having dropped the thunderbolt from his hand in the presence of his enemy, Indra was practically defeated and was very much ashamed. He dared not pick up his weapon again. Vitrasura, however, encouraged him, saying, "Take up your thunderbolt and kill your enemy. This is not the time to lament your fate." Text 7. Okay, let's try. Yuyat satam kutrachid atata yanam yaha sadekatra nave paratmaman vinekam utpati laya sthitisvaram sarvajnam adyam purusham sanatanam. Yuyut satam kuchratid atatayanam jaya sadek katra navai paratmanam vinekam utpati laya sthitisvaram sarvajnam adhyam purusham sanatanam. Okay, who wants to try to do a better job reciting this verse, please?
Oi. Yuyut satam kutrachit atatayinam jaya sadai katra navai paratmanam vinayakam utpati layasti tishvaram sarvagyam adyam purusham sanatanam.
Thank you. Yuyatsanam, of those who are belligerent. Kutrachit, sometimes. Atatayinam, armed with weapons. Jaya, victory. Sada, always. Ekatra, in one place. Na, not. Why, indeed. Para atmanam, of the subordinate living entities who work only under the direction of the Supersoul. Vina, except. Ekam, one. Utpati, of the creation. Laya, annihilation. Sthiti, and maintenance. Ishvaram, the controller. Sarvajnam, who knows everything, past, present, and future. Adhyam, the originals. Purusham, enjoyer. Sanatanam, eternal. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Vitrasura continued, "O Indra, no one is guaranteed of being always victorious, but the original enjoyer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. He is the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. And he knows everything. Being dependent and being obliged to accept material bodies, belligerent subordinates are sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham hirdi sani visto mata smirtir jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. When two parties fight, the fighting actually goes on under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, the Supersoul. Elsewhere in the Gita 3:27, the Lord says, Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudatma kartam iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. The living entities work only under the direction of the Supreme Lord. The Lord gives orders to material nature, and she arranges facilities for the living entities. The living entities are not independent, although they foolishly think themselves the doers, karta. Victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As far as the subordinate living entities, they fight under the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Victory or defeat is not actually theirs. It is an arrangement by the Lord through the agency of material nature. Pride in victory or moroseness in defeat is useless. One should fully depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is responsible for the victory and defeat of all living entities. The Lord advises Nityan Niyatam Guru Karma Tvam Karma Jaya Hi Arkamana Akarmana. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. The living entity is ordered to act according to his position. Victory or defeat depends on the Supreme Lord. Karmani evadika haras tema palashu kadachana. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. One must act sincerely according to his position. Victory or defeat depends on the Lord. Vitrasura encouraged Indra, saying, Don't be morose because of my victory. There is no need to stop fighting. Instead, you should go on with your duty. When Krishna desires, you will certainly be victorious. This verse is very instructive for sincere workers in Krishna consciousness movement. We should not be jubilant in victory or morose in defeat. We should make a sincere effort to implement the will of Krishna or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we should not be concerned with victory and defeat. Our only duty is to work sincerely so that our activities may be recognized by Krishna. Om Jnanatimrandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumitam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurube Namah Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhurevacha Patita Nama Pavnebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasti Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So some very nice verses here. We see the battle is continuing between Vitrasura and Lord Indra. And we see in these last few verses, of course, they are both, fighting with all their might. Indra has this thunderbolt weapon, which according to prophecy or destiny is the weapon that's going to kill Vitrasura. Of course, Vitrasura, he in his previous life was King Chitraketu, so a very, very amazing king. still somehow or the other, he ended up getting himself in trouble and getting cursed to take birth in a demon's body. And so we see, of course, we've discussed in previous chapters. Also, Indra has this tendency to also get himself into so much of trouble. But mainly all these examples are given here in the Bhagavatam so that we can all hopefully learn something that we can implement in our own personal lives. So in these verses, we see that Indra is, in one sense, doing his duty. He is a warrior, and he is fighting. Of course, they were already defeated by the demons, and as a result, they ended up asking the Supreme Lord's help. And so he gave the direction of how to make this powerful weapon, thunderbolt, that will be successful in defeating all the demons, and particularly killing Vitrasura. And so we read about how, great a personality Vitrasura was, gigantic, humongous form. Still, Indra is very confident with this weapon in his hand. And, in one of the verses here, it's mentioned that King Indra, he was not afraid, unafraid. He took up his weapon. And so when Vitrasura had launched a weapon, he, was fearless and, immediately cut up the thunderbolt. And simultaneously, he cut off one of Vitrasura's arms, which was thick as the body of Vasuki, the king of the serpents. So, of course, at some point, Vitrasura strikes Indra, and he also strikes his elephant carrier, Airavata. And Indra falls, and he drops the weapon. So, of course, we've read even in the Mahabharata about, so many codes of warfare. And, there were so many valiant warriors on the battle of Kurukshetra. So in a similar way, here, we can see powerful warriors also engaging in combat. And so once Indra's weapon falls from his hand, he kind of like loses composure. And, he's kind of like anticipating the final strike to come to, kill him. But we see that, of course, Vitrasura is such an amazing devotee. And, Vitrasura is not trying to evade his own death. He's actually, in previous verses we read, he's actually welcoming his death. So, we see that he's encouraging Indra. Vitrasura encouraged him, saying, "Take up your thunderbolt and kill your enemy. This is not the time to lament." And so then we come to this verse 7, where, in the purport, Prabhupada is explaining to us again. Of course, all these principles were covered in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, that the I am seated, so Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So we should try to, daily even recite, some of these verses to remind us of who we are, what our position is, and, what is our relation to Krishna. And, one of these nice verses is like this one, I am seated in everyone's heart. So within each and every one of our hearts, we have Krishna as the super soul. And from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. And then Prabhupada is saying, when two parties fight, fighting actually goes on under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, the super soul. So how often do we as devotees get into arguments with each other? Someone has a better plan, someone is more intelligent, someone feels that they know better. And, we find ourselves, especially, living in an ashram situation like us, that we're always finding petty things to argue and fight about. So, if we are sincere bhakti practitioners, we'll constantly remind each other or remind ourselves that I am seated in, Krishna is seated in everyone's heart. And so, Prabhupada is illustrating the point. When two parties fight, fighting actually goes on under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So try to analyze the situation for what it is. Whatever the contention is, we should try to analyze and see how it is going on under the direction of the Paramatma. That each one of us, the two parties generally, sometimes there's more than two parties involved, but generally there's two parties. And in those two parties, we see that there is the Paramatma in each one. So actually, these arguments are going on under the direction of the Supreme Lord. And so what's more information? Prabhupada is mentioning that the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. So, we should step back, from this contention, from this argument with another devotee, and see, exactly what is going on and how the material energy is actually influencing the situation. So we should try to analyze very scrutinizingly. Okay, firstly, we see that it is going on under the direction of the super soul. So even take another simple example of, someone stealing from someone else's house, when there is a burglar and thief. We can see in both those instances, again, there's the Supreme Paramatma in both of those entities, the thief and the person from whose home or belongings someone may be stealing from. That somehow the Paramatma is directing both of these activities. So we're familiar as bhakti yogis in Krishna consciousness of this principle of simultaneous oneness and difference. That some things may seem contradictory, but still they are going on, it seems like, together. So how to understand? There is a super soul in each person, but each one is thinking exactly the opposite way. So then we should graduate to the next level and see that actually it is, I am not the doer. And it's a difficult one for us to accept because, we are attached to our own bodies. And due to this attachment to our bodies, we identify that, this is my body, my position, and I know better. But from, this 327 in Bhagavad Gita, we understand that we are not the doer of activities. So if we start to analyze and see that, okay, if I'm not the doer, then what are we arguing about? And try to see each other's view and come to some sort of middle ground compromise. Well, let's read a little bit more in the purport here. Prabhupada is saying, victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even if one desires a victorious situation, we can understand that victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so in a similar way, I was thinking about, Arjuna's dilemma on the battlefield at the Battle of Kurukshetra. And there we learned that in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, there was many signs of victory for the Pandavas. And what were some of those signs of victory? Because here Prabhupada is mentioning victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we understand that, of course, Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Of course, he wasn't fighting personally, but he was on the chariot. So, Krishna's personal presence was confirming victory. So, of course, the presence of the goddess of fortune. So whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is always there with her. She never lives without her husband. The venue that the Battle of Kurukshetra was taking place was a holy place. Then on the chariot itself, Hanuman appeared on Arjuna's flag, so that was a sign of victory because ultimately he helped Lord Rama gain victory. So then there was also in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the battle starts out, with different sides blowing their conch shells. And, this transcendental conch shells was also a sign of victory. And another sign of victory was Agni Dev's chariot. So that chariot that they were riding on was able to conquer in all directions. And the last sign of victory was mentioned in 119, that when the conch shells were blown, they were shattering the hearts of the Kauravas. So if we are interested in a dispute or argument or whatever it is we're having with another devotee, we can see that victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so that's if we are interested in victory. But of course, the ultimate lesson to learn for us, given in Bhagavad Gita, is that in happiness and distress, what is the point I was going to make? That victory or defeat, Krishna's, or these verses are mentioning that, or Vitrasura is explaining that, one does not need to lament whether one is victorious or sometimes defeated. So whether there's victory or defeat, there is no reason to lament. One just needs to do one's duty. That is all, as living entities, we are meant to do. And here Prabhupada is mentioning, perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. So one of the, again, Battle of Kurukshetra, Arjuna was, of course, in a bewildered state. And, he was thinking he should not fight this battle because, so many people will be killed on the battlefield. And it's better, if he just retires to the forest. But the advice Krishna was giving him was that, you need to perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. The living entity is ordered to act according to his position. Victory or defeat depends on the Supreme Lord. So somehow we need to really repeatedly hear, plus repeat ourselves, this idea that victory or defeat depends on the Supreme Lord. And we should not be disturbed in either situation. So, in the end of the verse, end of this purport, Prabhupada is saying, we should make a sincere effort to implement the will of Krishna or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, we understand Krishna descended 5,000 years ago, and our most recent incarnation is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So why did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descend? To give us the simple process to go back home, back to Godhead. That just by chanting this Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, that we can be victorious. And just by the power of these holy names, we can go back home, back to Godhead. So there's no question of, victory or defeat in one sense. We should not be concerned with them. Our only duty is to work sincerely so that our activities may be recognized by Krishna. So somehow, we should all make a plan in our own personal lives, because, we've spoken about it before, that for each one of us, it is a personal journey in one sense. We're all definitely parts and parcels of the same Krishna. So we're all very related to each other as parts and parcels of Krishna. But still, each one of us needs to make a individual plan of how we can go back home, back to Godhead in this very lifetime. And it is certainly doable. Now we have the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam, giving countless examples, that we can apply in our everyday lives. We can see now we're learning from a demon, Vitrasura. Of course, yes, he was a great devotee, but still he's playing this role of a demon. And so even, in that body of a demon, he's even doing some preaching. And, to who else? But to Lord Indra himself. So Prabhupada is, imploring us that we should make a sincere effort to implement the will of Krishna and not be disturbed by victory or defeat. And so, we hear these droplets in different classes from, so many devotees, so many nice devotees, but how to practically implement it in our own lives. So we need to take stock, of all our activities. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why are we working? Why are we acting in, certain ways? I think there's some delay with pasteurization. So we all need to make a personal plan. And of course, most times it is very, very difficult in the material world. There's just so many things going on simultaneously that it can be difficult. And this is why we have the Association of Devotees to help us, help each other, in this journey, trying to transcend the three modes of material nature and be able to see what is material and what is spiritual. And so, we need to guide each other on this path of bhakti and help each other so that we can all go back home, back to Godhead. Somehow we need to be able to get rid of this idea that, I want to be victorious. But like I was saying, even if we have this idea that I want to be victorious, we should always remember that victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So somehow if we can surrender unto the will of Krishna, similar to how Arjuna had done on the battlefield, he had given so many reasons why he should not fight the battle. Yet, at some point, he takes Krishna as his spiritual master and asks him to guide him. So in this way, we should sincerely take the order of our spiritual master. Firstly, find a spiritual master, surrender to him, and then take his order as our life and soul. And this way, he'll be able to guide us and navigate this material world and how to get out of the material world and go back home, back to Godhead. So as devotees, we just don't want to get out of the material world and get liberation, for example, go to Vaikuntha. We want to go back to Goloka Vrindavan and be with Krishna. Okay, I'll stop there. Devotees, please share some thoughts and realizations on these verses.
Hare Krishna, Guru Prabhu. I have a few thoughts.
Right.
A number of Bhagavad Gita verses come to mind based upon Prabhupada's purport here and your discussion of it. There is in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advises Arjuna. He says, "Dukha dukhe same kritva labha labha jaya jaya to yudhaya yudhyasva naivam papam avapsyasi." He says, "Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin." So he is suggesting in this instance how Arjuna can remain situated transcendentally without becoming implicated in karma by simply performing his duty according to Krishna's directions, without becoming attached to any sort of profit or loss or victory or defeat, just simply acting and depending upon Krishna for the result. Similarly, this was text 38, and later in the same chapter, in text 47, Krishna says, "Kamandi vadikaraste ma pareshu kadachana na karma palahetu bor ma te sango svakarmani," that you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So, prescribed duty, we have a right to perform our prescribed duty. However, the result of that activity we are not entitled to. That belongs to Krishna. Krishna is instructing Arjuna that you perform your duty, but in all circumstances you remain detached from the fruit of that activity, that is Krishna's property. And by doing that, you remain transcendently situated. You are not implicated in karma. But if you try to enjoy the fruits of those actions, then you become subject to different reactions. So the reactions can be avoided by renouncing the fruit of those actions. That other verse that I had in my mind, I can't remember that. But Srila Prabhupada does mention, he refers to the third chapter, where Krishna is saying, "Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vibhuda karta hamiti panyate," that the living entity actually is not even the performer of the activity. That it's only under the influence of Maya that one is thinking that he's doing these different things. The activity is actually being carried out by three modes of material nature. The actual scope of activity of the living entity is minute. His position is that he can either take shelter of the material nature or the spiritual nature. So that choice is his, but the activities are actually conducted under the spiritual nature or under the material nature. So material activities actually are being carried out by the three modes of material nature. But we think that we are doing those things. So the beginning of extricating ourselves from that illusion is at least that we don't try to enjoy the fruit of that activity. We begin by cultivating detachment from the results. We offer that to Krishna. And gradually we come to realize that actually the result is completely within Krishna's control and not within our control. We may endeavor to any extent, and we might succeed or we might not. Ultimately, we can't really control. If it was up to us, we would always be successful, but we're not always successful. We often fail despite our best endeavors because it's not within our control. We can try to the best of our ability, and Krishna says we have a right to do that, but we're not entitled to the fruits. So anyway, that's something to think about in the course of carrying out our activities throughout the day. Those are some of my thoughts, Prabhu.
Thank you so much.
Don't have a lot more to offer. Hare Krishna, thank you for your class.
Thank you.
Hi, Krishna. Good morning, Dhruva Maharaj. Thank you for your class. It's always succinct and it's always really clarifying when you teach. And two things really did strike me. One, like what Tarka Prabhu just said, that I only really have two choices. You know, the choice is either I'm going to serve the Lord or I'm going to go my own way. And no matter how subtle it is or how much I try to fool myself that it's otherwise, it really boils down to one or the other. And then the other thing is that through this whole reading, I've been thinking about don't judge a book by its cover, because we keep saying how Vritrasura is the king of the demons, and yet really underneath it all, he's a pure devotee. He really wants to go back to Godhead, and he knows that he has this assurance. And then Indra, quite often in many stories, he's the king of heaven, this position that he's in, not the personality, but the job. And you think, oh, well, he's like this great, you'd have to be a wonderful personality to get this job, right? And then quite often he's like, yeah, not so much, like really, I'm picking my own way. And then it becomes a lesson for us, but he still goes through the drama and the trauma of making that choice. And then I also thought how when I get into trouble is when I stop being present in the moment of service. It's when I start thinking about how's it going to end up, and Indra drops the weapon and he immediately thinks, I'm going to lose. This is going to be horrible. Oh no, it's all over for me. And instead of just going, it's a battle, let me stay in the battle. Like, fight until I die. That's what this battle is about. And I think that sometimes is just trying to be present in exactly what's in front of me, rather than starting to spend all this mental energy making up stories about how it's going to go, how I want it to go. It should be like this, what's going to happen next. And then I'm frozen, and it becomes a mess just by the nature of the fact that I stop being present in the moment in my service. So thank you so much for your class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Powerful realizations on a very, very practical level that I think each and every one of us can relate to. So thank you for that lesson, Mata. We are very grateful. Be present in the moment. So, we should maybe take stock of, what is our dilemmas in life. What are we contemplating at any moment? Take stock of these things And then with these, principles just from even today's class, we can analyze and, try to put them in proper perspective. And if we can't do it alone, we should, enlist the help of, other devotees, close as friends that we have to help us navigate to these things. So, any other thoughts and realizations?
I have something more to
Haribo
add.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Yes, Gary, let Taraka Prabhu just quickly finish and then we'll get to your question.
Yeah, there was a time early in the movement when we had none of Srila Prabhupada's books in print. And then there came a time when we did have books, starting with some small books, and gradually we began to distribute those books. And Srila Prabhupada was very anxious to have his books distributed. That was his service to his spiritual master, and he encouraged us to assist him in that service. And the devotees would try to distribute books, and sometimes they would become depressed and dejected because, despite their best endeavors, they would not succeed. They might endeavor all day and distribute only one book, or sometimes none, or very few. And Srila Prabhupada would explain to us that you should not be dejected, regardless of what happens. You need to understand that he would tell us that the success is in the endeavor. You just try. And if you simply do that, then you are successful. Whether Krishna awards the success of actually getting someone to take a book or not, that's entirely up to Krishna. He can inspire someone to take the book or not, and we can pray for Krishna's help, but we depend upon Krishna for the result. We just perform the duty without being attached to the result, whether we're successful or not. And that way we can remain enthusiastic. We don't become dejected. We don't become depressed. We understanding that Krishna is responsible for the result. Our duty is simply to try. So the success is in the endeavor. That was Srila Prabhupada's instruction to us. And as the devotees adopted that mentality, they became very enthused in their service and also more successful in their service. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Yes, that's another powerful example. Success is in the endeavor. Agari Krishna Prabhu. Agari Krishna Prabhu, where are you?
Haribo.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the wonderful class. This is, I think, for me now, my favorite verse. Very powerful.
Yeah.
So my question, Tarka Prabhu has given, basically, I guess a set of verses from Bhagavad Gita, and also quoting the example from Prabhupada in terms of how to transcend attachment to victory and defeat. But it's still difficult, So, for example, with what Thakur Prabhu just said about success being in the endeavor, as a devotee who isn't, when a practitioner is not yet on the Uttama platform, or even maybe just, they actually maybe below even Nishta, they're still in an artha. One is still conditioned by secular standards of success and failure. So, for example, the social comparison where, yes, okay, you're distributing books, but it's not that you were born a devotee, and you look on the streets, everybody's going to work, they have property, and then you're, aspiring to become a householder. but you're struggling with the circumstances to keep it together, and it's affecting your Krishna consciousness because you don't have enough resources, etc., etc. So on the Karma Mishra Bhakta platform, there's still a pushing from secular standards of success. And therefore, even just doing the endeavor, in most cases, it's not enough, you know. So, what is like for a devotee who's like trying to move out of anartha, trying to move past these the conditioning from the secular standards of success? Is there another, I don't know, material consideration that can be there so that you can transcend this? Like, for example, with Kshatriyas, the way they do it is that even though, yes, victory and defeat belongs to the Supreme Lord, but they're still motivated to fight because either they die and they attain to the heavenly planets, or they die and get a kingdom. And so that becomes an incentive to continue to fight. So for a devotee, what is it?
What is it? My understanding,
The incentive to continue to fight.
right. My understanding is that, of course, we're individual parts and parcels, so we're all individuals. So as individuals, of course, the old conundrum is there, what is my duty? But again, we have to navigate that with our spiritual master. What is my duty? And, he'll guide us accordingly. And we have to, have some faith. But then we also have to, like Krishna was telling, we have to act. So we can't just sit back and wait and say, well, something's going to happen that's going to show me what my duty is. No, we have to act. Inaction is not, going to work. So we have to act. So I think, most of us have already been down a particular path, a particular journey, both materially and on the transcendental path as well. So we've made certain choices. And we all, I think, to some degree understand that, we also have karma. Yes, a lot of our karma has also been wiped out after we took initiation. But still, every day we're creating karma. Whether it's, knowingly or unknowingly. So both these things are going on simultaneously. So I think the advice here being given is that we just need to, act in knowledge that, like maybe even if we just take these 2 points, that, Krishna is in our heart, and we are not the doers, that, the material energy is the actual doer of activities. So with those 2, we continue to act, and in this way, gradually, things will be revealed to us. And I think, yesterday, even Mother Krishna Mai was mentioning that, sometimes we always look back and think, wow, Krishna saved me, Krishna saved me, Krishna saved me. And, we can see this happening in our life, time and time and again for those, sincere practitioners. And it's undeniable in one sense that, this is going on. And this is what keeps, our faith with the journey. And I think if things are really going wrong in our lives for whatever reason, whether it's materially or even, some spiritual difficulty is there, that's when, the association of devotees, comes in. Of course, we can reach out more to our spiritual master. But I mean, I'm trying to think, even Srila Prabhupada, of course, at some point he was a successful businessman, but gradually, when he, started to take more to spiritual life, so to speak, his business gradually, went down. So it's not like he just didn't care about his business. He was trying his level best. And that's all we can do. That's why Thakur Prabhu was saying, success is in the endeavor. And so he was still trying to do his business, the pharmacy, but, things were just not working. And so gradually, you get to a point where you realize that, okay, this is not working. I need to try something else. And so I think, those kinds of decisions, together with your spiritual master and the association of devotees, some things can become clear. And of course, in Prabhupada's example as well, Prabhupada wanted to spread Krishna consciousness as a rich man. And ultimately he did. But of course, not the way he was thinking. He was thinking that, his bank balance is just going to be so high that he's going to arrange, this worldwide movement with his bank balance. But, he was in Calcutta distributing books, magazines, practically penniless, even when he came to America, penniless. So, in one sense, if you think about what does it mean to be rich, Prabhupada was down and out, completely down and out. Still, he was successful. So yes, definitely these comparisons are there, of other successful friends, family, or whoever it is. But we should always try to appreciate that this Krishna consciousness that we have is actually more valuable. And, in the association of devotees, by, hearing, reading, chanting, we're already doing some of these things more sincerely. We can, rise above these material thoughts that will come that, such and such person is more successful than me. We should share and talk more about this point, Gari Krishna Prabhu, in the association of devotees to uncover more thoughts and realizations. The doors are going to open now. Thank you, devotees, for sharing. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar, Salita Vishaka ki jai, Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai.